The Greek Renaissance, the history and legacy of the era leading to ancient Greece's Archaic Age, by Charles River Editors, narrated by Colin Fluxman. Introduction. When people think of ancient Greece, images of philosophers, such as Plato or Socrates, often come to mind, as do great warriors like Pericles and Alexander the Great. But hundreds of years before Athens became a city, a Greek culture flourished and spread its tentacles throughout the western Mediterranean region via trade and warfare. Scholars have termed this pre-classical Greek culture the Mycenaean culture, which existed from about 2000 to 1200 BC, when Greece, along with much of the eastern Mediterranean, was thrust into a centuries-long dark ages. Before the Mycenaean culture collapsed, it was a vital part of the late Bronze Age Mediterranean system and stood on equal footing with some of the great powers of the region, such as the Egyptians and Hittites. Despite being ethnic Greeks and speaking a language that was the direct predecessor of Classical Greek, the Mycenaeans had more in common with their neighbors from the island of Crete, who are known today as Minoans. Due to their cultural affinities with the Minoans and the fact that they conquered Crete yet still carried on many Minoan traditions, the Mycenaeans are viewed by some scholars as the later torchbearers of a greater Aegean civilization, much the way the Romans carried on Hellenic civilization after the Greeks. Given that the Mycenaeans played such a vital role on the history in the late Bronze Age, it would be natural to assume there are countless studies and accurate chronologies on the subject, but the opposite is true. Although the Mycenaeans were literate, the corpus of written texts from the period is minimal, so modern scholars are left to use a variety of methods in order to reconstruct a proper history of Mycenaean culture. In fact, even the name Mycenaean can be a bit misleading, since it refers only to one locale in Greece. However, since the city was the first Bronze Age site discovered, it became a reference point for archaeologists and historians to use to refer to any Bronze Age discoveries in Greece. Archaeology has provided the basis for all studies of the ancient Mycenaeans, as does art history, which can be the study of any material culture, including pottery, sculptures, reliefs, and jewelry. The Homeric epics also provide some information about Mycenaean culture, though Homer was a poet who lived hundreds of years after the collapse of the Mycenaean culture. Classical Greek historians and geographers also wrote about the Mycenaeans, but their works should be consulted.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?